Hey everyone, it's Esther. Today I want to discuss one of life's big questions: why are we here? And before I go further, I want you to take a moment and ask yourself, why are we here? And I want you to reflect on the response that comes up. So, when you ask this question to the majority of people, it's going to usually fall under one of these responses. So, many people will say that the reason why we are here is so we can live well and be happy. Another type of person might say it's to make the world a better place. Another person who is religious might say, oh, it is to follow God and go to heaven or attain enlightenment. And I think those who are of an atheistic disposition, they may say, well, there's no real reason, but we're just here to experience life and then it's over. The lights are off and that is life. And interestingly, I think most people, they will respond with the first response, which is to live well and be happy. But of course, most people would say, yeah, the reason we're here is to make the world a better place. But by and large, if you do a survey of people, people are going to say something along the lines of it's to live well, be happy, and be content, make the most of life, so on and so forth. And you can do a test on this. You can ask your family or friends or coworkers or just people you run into. And if you feel vulnerable enough, say, why do you think we are here on Earth? And just listen to people. This is not to criticize anyone, but just listen and observe. And so most people, I think, are going to say the first thing. Um, but some people might say the second, which is to make the world a better place. Now, I find this interesting because although there is truth to some of these responses, like, it is important to live well and be happy and make the world a better place, I think that these deal more with the what and the how, the content rather than the context. And so I think that, more and more people are questioning reality and questioning the reason for existence. And so the deeper question beyond, okay, well, what are we here on earth to do, is what is the original purpose of existence? Like, why are we here to begin with? And so that's the thing that I want to discuss and address today. Now, some people might say, well, what are your qualifications? Are you a professor? Are you a theologian? Like, what are your qualifications? And that's such an interesting and funny um, kind of thought, because the truth of the matter is that even theologians and philosophers, professors who have high degrees, like, you could have degrees or qualifications and everything, and that doesn't necessarily mean a person knows the truth about reality, the truth about existence. Now, those things might aid and support and definitely give some backing to their understanding, but that's not always the case. And in fact, a lot of people, they can have a lot of knowledge, but that doesn't necessarily mean they know the truth. And so my qualifications, it's just about my own view on life. Okay. So I am influenced by different people, but I go by my own conclusions, and I try to exercise critical thinking by using my logic and my intuition. But wisdom is not something that you necessarily have to have qualifications for. So that's what I first of all want to say, because some people love to debate. Some people are contrarians and they think that a discussion like this is okay. I'm going to come in and bring my best debating uh, ideas, and I think that's silly. This is not what this video is for. Okay. Another thing I want to say is that no one knows everything, and there's a lot of hidden knowledge in this world. And I don't say that as a cop out, but the truth of the matter is that I might miss some things in this video. And also, there are some things it might not be that I miss, but there has to be more elaboration. And the truth of the matter is that so much knowledge in this world is hidden. And so you have to understand that this is some views on reality, and I believe these are general true conclusions. But if I miss something, understand no one knows everything, and there is a lot of hidden knowledge out there. And so I'm working with what I have, okay? That's what I'm trying to get at. And also, I can't address everything in one video. So, if some things come to mind, feel free to share in the comments, like, hey, what about this? And that's interesting you said that because it made me think about this. I want you to share that in the comment sections. I really encourage discussion and critical thinking, and that's a part of the reason I'm making this video. But also, if I don't capture every single thing, it's because this is such a broad, complex, huge question, okay? And so please understand, I'm doing the best I can. So finally, I want to say that I'm not saying that what I share in this video is what you should believe. This is just my theory. There's endless theories out there. So I want you to just take what resonates and leave the rest. But I think that this will resonate with a good amount of people. And if it does, hopefully it can be of value and benefit for you, okay? And so when it comes to the original purpose of our existence, I think that many people today who are interested in spirituality, they believe that the reason we are here on this earth is because we are here in a simulation in a prison planet. And where that gets tricky is that I do think that to some degree this planet is like a prison, and it is like a simulation in a sense where there are a lot of lies and deception. It's like our history is fabricated, politics, academia, like there's just so much that is false, that is a lie, and so much mind control that in that sense it is like a prison of the mind as well as the external. And there's a lot of things in the external world which try to condition us to not recognize our power, not recognize how we can better ourselves and the world. And so in that sense it is like a prison planet. Also, there are certain dark beings that harvest negative human energy. So we are, in a sense, food for the dark side. When we are vulnerable, when we are allowed, opened to that dark influence, okay? And that's why it's important to make sure you have some sort of spiritual life where, you're living upright and you have your head on your shoulders, because otherwise you can be vulnerable to these dark influences that feed on you. So there's truth to these things. I think a lot of people are increasingly feeling this way due to what seems like a lot of prophecies unfolding. So, that can be what seems like biblical prophecies unfolding, maybe even Mayan prophecies, different prophecies from different traditions, predictive programming that we have seen in media, just a lot of different exposures going on. And it just seems like it's the end. And, whether it's the end of human civilization in the imminent future, or we're simply experiencing the end of the old world order, so that's why there's all this chaos and tumultuousness going on, regardless of which one it is, there is still this energy of this end times, right? And so I think that there are truths to the fact that this matrix is like a simulation, a prison planet, and it can seem as though from one point of view, from one vantage point, that we are here to just be food for the dark side, and we're just like an experiment in a sense. I think that we are experimented on to some degree, but I think that is not the whole picture. I think the picture is broader than that. So in my view, I think that there is a creator, a divine creator, and it wasn't it isn't that we're just here on earth against our will, just, all right, here you go, fend for yourself now. But the Creator, God, the original reason was so that people can join God in heaven and heaven be expanded. And earth is a intermediary before that. But I want to, before I go into that further, I want to explore some main views about the final destination of the soul, okay? So when I speak of the soul here, I mean the spiritual body. So with atheists, they tend to view the final destination of the soul as nothingness. You know, you're born here, you die, it's over. There's nothing after this life. Like there's nothing. Other people, I would say people in the spiritual community, typically believe that the final destination of the soul, the spiritual body, is that you become energy. And that might be after this life, or, you know, if you have, I don't know, like, I just feel like they just see it as energy. Like you die and you become energy. You might reincarnate, but the bigger picture, the end destination, is that you are just an energy. And then the other view is that your spiritual soul becomes a spiritual being. So that's a little bit different from being an energy, because an energy is kind of like no place. It's just like in space. It's just like somewhere, but it's not defined. So, yeah, typically when it comes to people who believe that a person becomes energy, they believe that it's reincarnation, the soul evolves, and then the ultimate goal is to merge with the absolute. And I'm not putting people down for believing in reincarnation, but the way that most of these individuals seem to look at it is that the soul merges with the absolute. It doesn't have an individuality of its own, and there's no heaven or hell or any sort of spiritual community it resides. It's just like in the ether, in the cosmos. And so I find that kind of strange how, you know, okay, even if you experience ultimate enlightenment and you merge with the all, well, where does your soul go? You know, where does your spiritual being go? And so that's where I feel I kind of shy away from that view of thinking about things, because there is no place for the spiritual body, the spiritual being at the end. It's just that your energy, and it's kind of like you're just in a place of the vast universe. Okay, and so what seems more accurate to me is that there is life, and then after our life we have an afterlife, and depending on how you lived, then you'll go to our particular spiritual community. And so there is a place for the soul. It does, the spiritual being has some sort of form, and then it goes somewhere in the afterlife, and this is eternity. And eternity is something that you can't really explain, because there's no time and space, or rather you can't really conceptualize it by human minds. And so there is no time and space, but there is also still somewhere you can go, which is a spiritual community that matches with you. So something to consider is that demonic beings, I think not all of them are human beings, but I think that a great deal of them were human beings. And so in my view, it seems like that is evidence, that is a testament to how the physical body, that's not all there is to it. And after, if a person's spirit gets trapped in this realm, that speaks to the fact that we're more than just the physical body. We are spirit, and the spirit goes somewhere, okay? And so for some people, their spirit gets trapped in this realm, and it is perhaps due to their karma or something negative, something that tethers them to this realm in a manner that perpetuates suffering. But I think that is a testament to how, you know, life is more than the physical, because these are things that you can even back up with evidence. Like there's many stories of places that are haunted, places with paranormal activity, and if someone is a seer, if someone has the gift of being able to read the energy of certain places, they can see demonic individuals or beings sometimes. So going back to the question of, okay, well, why were human beings created in the first place, and what is the greater purpose of this all? I think there are some clues in the first Matrix film where Agent Smith interrogates Morpheus, and he says, and I want to say that because the Matrix film is not, some of you guys already know this, but the Matrix film is not just a fictional film, but it has some hidden occult truths in it. And so it's something to, with a lot of codes and symbolism, and some of these are truthful things about existence that are important to consider to understand this world better, to understand the universe. But anyway, Agent Smith says, "Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world where none suffered, where everyone would be happy? It was a disaster. No one would accept the program. Entire crops were lost. Some believe we lacked a programming language to describe your perfect world. But I believe that as a species, human beings define their reality through suffering and misery. The perfect world was a dream that your primitive cerebrum kept trying to wake up from." And he also says that, "I'd like to share a revelation that I've had during my time here. It came to me when I tried to classify your species, and I realized you're not actually mammals. Every mammal on this planet instinctively develops a natural equilibrium with the surrounding environment, but you humans do not. You move to an area and you multiply and multiply until every natural resource is consumed, and the only way you can survive is to spread to another area. There is another organism on this planet that follows the same pattern. Do you know what it is? A virus. Human beings are a disease, a cancer of this planet. You're a plague, and we are the cure." So this is so interesting, because Agent Smith here is speaking from everything from a dark lens, and he's trying to essentially brainwash Morpheus to believe these things. Is fascinating because on one hand, it is true that the earth originally was an idyllic place, it was an idyllic environment, and then it got corrupted. But he doesn't explain how a person can be a catalyst to make this world a better place. Rather, he just focuses on the negative and uses that as a justification for why the dark side is justified in exploiting and taking over, having power and dominion over the masses. And so it's quite interesting because there is a solution. And I think the reason why people are kept asleep in regards to spirituality, which includes religion and false doctrines and dogma, such as a rapture or justification by faith alone, and all of these other false traditions, it is due for the purpose of suppressing the human consciousness. And most religious leaders, they partake in being gatekeepers of the matrix system, even if they don't know they are. So they might not necessarily be predatory wolves, but most of them are under mind control. And I think all of this is to prevent people from getting in touch with their true sovereignty and their light. And if they did, then it would transform the system. When a person has their consciousness is liberated, their mind control is not running them, and they are someone who is being guided by the light, then that changes the equilibrium of the system. And it's not just love and light, okay? I just want to make that very clear, because some people think it's just about being love and light and happy and joyful all the time. And the truth of the matter is that it's also about being a warrior. It's also about being someone who fights against the darkness. So it's not just about love and light, although there's nothing wrong. If you want to use that term, I'm not like criticizing you. I mean, I think in the right context, it's fine to use that term, but sometimes people, they use love and light as a way to spiritually escape. And there's a lot of work to do here. There's a lot of deprogramming. It's more than just love and light, but it's also about deprogramming and activating that light and having to fight sometimes. Okay. So anyway, when that happens, though, people are going to have a higher sense of purpose and direction while being guided by the divine. And it is that paradigm shift which would result in a collapse of the old structure, because dark energy is what keeps the old structure going. And so why do the dark side feel they can have justified power and dominion, enslavement of humanity? Well, they don't believe in God. They believe that man is the ultimate God and there's no higher creator than man. So they think that they can avoid judgment, and they don't believe the rules apply to them. They may have double standards. And so it's a whole convoluted spiritual kind of way they are, but basically it boils down to rebellion and haughtiness and thinking that they are greater than God. There's no God. Okay. But as going to the ultimate purpose of existence, I know there's a lot of layers to this and some people are annoyed and bear with me, please. This is a very layered, complex subject. It's that, as I said, God wanted to create humankind so he could have as many people in heaven so the heavens could be increased. And earth is a intermediary before a person goes into heaven. I don't know why that is exactly. Haven't gone that far in my studies yet, but earth is an intermediary before a person can go into the heavenly realm. A person might ask, okay, if God exists, why couldn't I just have existed in the spiritual realm? Or better yet, why was I born at all? This world is full of so much misery and suffering. I don't want to be here. I've heard that many, many times, and I understand it. This world is a very dark place at times. There is beauty, there is goodness, but it also can be very dark, right? And so I understand why people might say, I wish I wasn't born at all. Why do I have to be here? Why, if God was so good, why did he bring people into this dense earth? And I want to share something that totally blew my mind. So typically when we think of heaven and hell, we think it is something that existed before mankind. But actually, what I have learned from my studies is that heaven comes from the human race. So it wasn't that angels and demons were already there and then, people would either go to heaven or hell. But actually, heaven or hell comes from the human race. And I'm going to read an excerpt from a book called Divine Providence by Emanuel Swedenborg, which is an esoteric Christian book. And it says, heaven does not consist of angels created as such to begin with, nor does hell come from any devil created an angel of light and cast down from heaven. Both heaven and hell are from mankind, heaven consisting of those in the love of good and consequent understanding of truth, and hell of those in the love of evil and consequent understanding of falsity. As heaven is from mankind and is in abiding with the Lord to eternity, it must have been the Lord's purpose in creation. Being the purpose in creation, it is the purpose of his providence. The Lord created the world, not for his own sake, but for the sake of those with whom he would be in heaven. Spiritual love by nature desires to give its own to another, and so far as it can do so in its essence, peace and blessedness. It follows that the divine love and hence divine providence for its object a heaven consisting of human beings who have become or are becoming angels on whom the Lord can bestow all the blessings and felicities of love and wisdom, and do so from himself in men. It must be in this way, for the Lord's image and likeness are in men from creation. The image in them, wisdom and likeness, love. So, yeah, this is speaking to how the heavens, hells, they didn't just already exist, but it was something that came from humankind. And that's a totally different paradigm shift from the way we typically look at it, because we typically think that the spiritual realm already existed, and then it was people came from that. But actually, heaven and hell is something that human beings, they are created, essentially. So that speaks to how, considering that heaven and hell came from mankind, it wasn't just something that existed. Now, there may have been something in the ether. Yes, there may have been something in the ether, but in terms of heaven and hell pre-existing, this is an alternate view where it wasn't already there, but heaven and hell came from the human race. And when you think that, I want to tie this together to originally Earth was supposed to be an idyllic place, and the ancients, they had a deeper connection with God, and it was a paradisical kind of environment. But then, because of free will and choice, a person, there's a polarity to the human will, and so evil doesn't come from God, but we have a choice to engage in good or evil. And so, unfortunately, human beings, they gave way to the evils, and because it got out of hand, that is why Jesus had to come to earth to order the hells and protect heaven, because at that time, hell was getting so bad, it was going up so much, it was growing so large that Jesus had to come to create order in the spiritual realm. And the desire, the goal is to increase heaven. And Jesus came to restore the law, not to abolish the law, so that humanity can be redeemed. And through this, a person can come into partnership with God. And those who don't become Christian, maybe because they never learned about Christianity or for whatever reason, it's still, if a person wants to tap into a template or pathway of virtue, that is what I think is Christ consciousness. So although a partnership with God is very valuable, and asserting that Jesus is the Lord of your life can be of benefit, ultimately, in terms of the bigger picture, it's not about religious affiliation. It is more about the motives and how a person lives in accordance to their faith. Okay, and faith being not religious affiliation, but it's like the way that they believe life, conceptualize life, their principles and values. Okay, that is what makes up a person's faith. Sometimes the word faith is used in different ways, but in this setting, I'm not talking about having faith in being able to manifest a job, but like faith or religious affiliation, but faith in terms of what is something that guides a person's life. So evil people have a faith of their own. They have a distorted, corrupt, perverse sort of faith, whereas good people, they have their own kind of faith. You understand what I mean? A partnership with God, though, it is valuable in the sense where you can give credit to God, because a lot of times people take credit for their goodness, for their virtue, and this can result in self-importance, self-glorification, and that can losing the word, that can like split the connection between the heavenly realms when you're so focused on your self-importance, your self-glorification, when it's all about you and you become very self-centered. Okay, so contrary to how mainstream Christians view it, there's no such thing as instant salvation. You don't just, okay, I confess Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and bam, you become purified, and then you just go to heaven. It is everything about the way that you truly are. And so if a person says Jesus is their Lord and Savior, but then they live a life where it's primarily of sin and serving themselves, and they're not really wanting to go through sanctification, that is not really having genuine faith. And the scripture provides ample evidence for this as well. Jesus said that not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, is someone that he knows, but he says, go away from me, evildoers. And these are people who said they were prophesying in his name and casting out demons, but it's not about religious affiliation at the end of the day. It is really about if a person truly has good motives, and if they are truly allowing that divine connection to God and wanting to live in a manner that is as pure as possible. And so God cannot be mocked. God sees everything. And so at the end of the day, it's going to be the sincerity, the motives, everything about you, because everyone is different. Everyone has different backgrounds. People have different levels of consciousness and understanding. And so it's not necessarily about what you know, but what kind of values and principles you had that guided your life. And was it for good or was it for harm? Did you use certain views to justify living in a way that was self-serving? Did you adopt lazy mindsets and beliefs so you could not live in a way that is under divine influence? A lot of religious people are like that. They are people who go to church every Sunday, but a lot of them are spiritually lazy. They're not really interested in understanding the deeper spiritual principles, and it's really tragic. I'm not saying this to just criticize and put down people who are religious, but I find it tragic because a lot of times it's a blind spot. It's a suppression of the consciousness. It's almost like a fog. And I think that I want to say I kind of feel like it's not entirely their fault, but at the same time, I think that if we opened ourselves, if we were more humble, then we would be open to the divine influence, and we would want to be more diligent and have more ambition. Ambition may not be the best word, but more type of dedication and discipline in our spiritual life. But I find that's very lacking in most people, because the discipline is important. That's what it means to be a disciple of Christ, So anyway, ultimately, I think that the reason why we're here on earth is because God wanted us to be in heaven, but unfortunately humankind got corrupted. And so as a result of that corruption, people, they either are going to live on the left-hand path or the right-hand path. And if a person, they can tap into this virtuous template, then they are people who would go to heaven. And having a partnership with Jesus and acknowledging Jesus as your Lord, that can be beneficial because it can prevent you from attributing credit to yourself. At least that's my view. However, I think it all depends on the sincerity and the motives at the end of the day. And so I think that people who are not Christian, if they are someone who is sincere and they live with good motives and they do good unto others, those people can go into heaven as well. So anyway, I hope that this was a valuable message for you. God bless and take care.